Hi, my name is Elizabeth Causton, and I want to welcome you to part one of a two-part presentation entitled, That's a Good Question, How to Make Difficult Conversations Easier. We might even go so far as to say, how to make difficult conversations easier when you can't make them go away. In this part one, we are going to look at how to respond to difficult questions and how to engage in difficult conversations in ways that both maximize your information gathering skills and help the people that you are caring for to feel seen and heard and validated. In the second part, we will look at what this approach looks like on the ground using real-life examples that you might encounter in your work. The premise of these two presentations is that as healthcare assistants, you are uniquely situated on the healthcare team to be valuable information gatherers because of your close proximity to residents, clients, and family members, sometimes over long periods of time. Because of your capacity for building relationships and fostering trust, and because of your excellent skills in listening and in companioning. So the goal at the end of these two presentations is that instead of dreading difficult conversations and questions and trying to avoid them, you actually might start to feel more comfortable engaging in difficult conversations and responding to difficult questions, and maybe even begin to see them as opportunities to improve your skills, build your self-confidence, and maximize your value with the team. So I want to start by focusing on a different question to start with when we are faced with a difficult conversation or a difficult question. Typically, we start with questions like, what am I supposed to say? Or, of course, what am I not supposed to say? Or, what am I supposed to do? Or, of course, what am I not supposed to do? What I am suggesting is that we start instead with the question, what more do I need to understand? What more do I need to understand about this concern, about this question, about this situation? What more do I need to understand about why this person is having this strong emotional reaction? What more do I need to know about their story, their previous experience with the healthcare system, their previous experience with the death of someone close to them? What more do I need to know about their expectations, their hopes, or their fears? Asking the question, what more do I need to know first, is about getting in the habit of gathering crucial information before you try to decide what you're supposed to do or what you're supposed to say. So I hope that after these two presentations, what you will take away are 4 key words that define a strategy to make difficult conversations and difficult questions easier. Those 4 key words are validate, explore, respond, and share. Or if you like acronyms, that's VERS, V-E-R-S. But before we look at how to operationalize these 4 words, let's take a moment to look at how we typically define difficult conversations. So difficult conversations generally relate to topics around death, dying, illness, decline in someone's condition, particularly if that is sudden, difficult symptom management, loss, grief, and pretty much anything that generates a strong emotional reaction, especially if that reaction is unexpected or unpredictable. The thing is, given all this, there's a huge potential for conversations around these very topics to be routine in your line of work. So the very first step in making difficult conversations easier is to stop defining them as abnormal, as someone else's job, as a part of the work to be avoided at all costs. It means understanding that we actually create and perpetuate a negative attitude toward these very common conversations simply by using the word difficult to describe them. So it means not starting with questions like, what am I supposed to say to someone who's grieving? What is the right thing to say to someone who's dying? What am I supposed to do about someone who's really angry? What can I say to make someone feel better? The thing is that particularly in the context of challenging conversations and questions, and please note that we're now calling them challenging conversations and questions. In the context of these kinds of conversations and questions, starting with the question, what am I supposed to say and what am I supposed to do, can actually put us in the very difficult spot of having to come up with an answer or an action before we have all the information we need to answer or act effectively. And in addition to that, these questions imply that there actually is a right thing to say or do in all kinds of different situations if someone would just tell us what that is. But I want to share a different option with you, an option that is defined by the 4 words we started with at the beginning: validate, explore, respond, and share, or verse. So let's look at what happens when we put these 4 words into action. Validating. This is about taking time to acknowledge a person's right to ask a question, to express a concern, even to have a strong emotional reaction. When we pause before jumping in with an answer or an action, and take the time to validate the importance of the question being asked, legitimacy of the feelings of the person who's asking the question, to validate the gravity of the situation, or maybe even just how difficult it is sometimes to put things into words, we're saying, I see you, I hear you. Let's start there. And in just doing that very thing, we take the first step in providing a healing response, which in and of itself can begin to diffuse a difficult conversation or situation. Rachel Remen, an American oncologist, therapist, and author, says that healing happens when someone feels they have been seen and heard and validated. So when we start out this way, we are actually providing that healing response. We validate someone when we say things like, this sounds important to you. That's a good question. That's a question many people ask. I can hear the pain in your voice. I can see you're really upset by this. It sounds like that was hard for you. And you can do this. Of course, you would use your own words. You wouldn't use my words. But the thing is that all of these phrases are on the list of things you can say and that you can do. They're all within your job description. So now that you've done some validating, you can move on to exploring. And this is about seeking to understand what is really happening. It's about wanting to know what the real issues are. What is behind the question? What is that question really about? Before we try to take an action or come up with an answer. This is about checking out what we think we are seeing and hearing to be sure that that's accurate. Why? Because we know that our own personal filters and biases can actually alter what we see and hear. And we also know that the primary cause of misunderstanding in conversations, especially conversations with high emotional content, is a lack of accurate information and a reliance on faulty assumptions. So you explore when you say things like, I want to understand what this is like for you. Can you tell me more about that? Have you ever watched someone die? What did you take away from that experience? Can you tell me a bit more about how you came to this particular decision? What do you think would happen if you did that? What do you think this change in condition means? What are your hopes? What are your fears? What are your expectations of us? Can you tell me more about what's upsetting you? Is there something you would like me to do differently? So you validate, and then you explore, and then you're ready to respond. Now, yes, a response can be an answer to a question, or a response can mean taking an action that will improve or change or somehow clarify some aspect of a person's care. But unlike an answer, a response can also be another question that furthers more exploration. So you might say something, well, now that we've had that conversation, tell me, what do you think? How is that for you? What would you like to see happen? Do you have a sense of what's happening right now? What do you want us to know about you or about your loved one to provide the very best care possible? A response can also involve more validation. You might say, okay, that's really good for me to know. I have a much better understanding now of what this has been like for you. Thanks very much for clarifying that question for me. That's really helpful, and that will really be helpful to the team. The point is that when we don't limit ourselves in how we respond to a challenging question or a challenging conversation, to just an answer or an action, when we don't limit ourselves to just asking, what am I supposed to say, or what am I supposed to do, we open up a wide variety of potential responses that we can use to increase our understanding, our clarity, and our effectiveness. So now you have validated, you've explored, and you've responded. You're ready to share with your team. And you are now able to share information with your team that is both detailed and accurate. Information that makes their job easier, that reduces the likelihood of misunderstandings and faulty assumptions guiding how care is provided, and you've also maximized your value on the team. So, for example, instead of just saying, Mr. C is refusing to take his pain medications, you might say, yes, I know Mr. C is refusing to take his pain medications, but I found out that the reason he's doing that is because they make him sleepy. And he's terrified that if he goes to sleep, he'll never wake up because he thinks that's what happened with his wife. So instead of just saying, yes, Mrs. S keeps feeding her husband even though it makes him vomit and choke, you might say, yes, I know she won't stop feeding him, but I found out that the reason she's doing that is because her friends have told her that if she stops feeding her husband, he'll starve to death. And that's just unacceptable to her. Or instead of simply agreeing that Mr. C is a difficult client, being able to say something like, I know Mr. C is angry sometimes and difficult to work with, but I found out that the reason he comes across as so angry sometimes is because he's so afraid of losing his position as the decision maker and head of the family, and that as his condition declines, he'll need to be cared for by other people as if he were a child. And that's so scary to him. You see, all of this additional information is so incredibly invaluable. It's so incredibly valuable and has such a profound effect on how care is provided. So what we have established here is that what we typically call difficult conversations are in fact routine questions and conversations in the work that you have chosen to do. And that while they may be challenging, they are normal. And they don't need to be feared. They don't need to be avoided. Once you have a strategy for approaching them that is well within your scope of practice, that gives you an opportunity to maximize your information gathering skills and that allows you to provide your team with really important information that makes their job easier and improves care. And that approach, that strategy, is VERS, V-E-R-S, validate, explore, respond, and share. So now in part 2, we'll explore what this approach looks like on the ground using real-life examples that you are likely to come across in your work. Thank you.